Hey guys, we have none other than Zev Feldman with us today from Blue Note Records, and we're going to talk about the fantastic new release that just came out with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers from Japan. Zev, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Greg. Nice to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. This is a really remarkable recording. I want to get some of your thoughts about how this was all put together. Believe it or not, we have to tell people there may be some people out there who don't realize how big and important Art Blakey is. Is that something you can just, where does Art Blakey fit in the jazz iconography of America?
Well, as the great Lou Donaldson said, he is one of the heaviest of swingers. He's got one of the most recognizable drum rolls, sounds, if you will. And he's in the fabric of this genre of music in such an amazing way. I mean, as a leader, as a sideman, he was a university, if you will, in the sense that he educated and took so many wonderful musicians under his wing when he was on this planet. And he's one of the greatest of all time. I mean, how else do you characterize this man? He gave so much, and as Donald Harrison says in our interview, asked for nothing in return. It was just an amazing man.
Yeah, I mean, people would probably consider the Jazz Messengers maybe the greatest hard bop band of all time because it was around for so long, decades and decades, and he had so many great players with him. Everybody who, if he chose you to be in your band, you were destined for greatness, not because you were just that good to be in his band. So today we have the pairing of Lee Morgan and Wayne Shorter, which is an amazing, amazing pairing. So anyway, let's get into this record, 1961. Can you tell us a little bit about why they went to Japan and what going to Japan meant to them?
Well, they were really, it's hard to say who was like the first American jazz musician to go over. There are definitely accounts of Louis Armstrong going over previously, possibly Oscar Peterson. But Blakey really, I think, made one of the most grand entrances in the country. If you read Bob Blumenthal's liner notes, he talks about a readers poll that had been implemented and asking about which of the American jazz artists would you like to have come to Japan? And Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers won that. And they were really of note, one of the first bands to go over, becoming really in part ambassadors of this music and representing our country. And they did this tour in 1961. And there were a slew of tour dates that happened. I want to point out that these recordings are previously unissued. They've never been out before, and folks should not confuse this with A Day in Tokyo releases that I believe came out on the Bainbridge label, which, by the way, as far as I know, not official releases. Art Blakey was a Blue Note recording artist. So anyways, he goes over for this tour, and you can read about Wayne Shorter's own words talking about the reception, people meeting them at the airport like they were rock stars, people lined up after the gigs to meet them, and everybody wanted a little piece and getting a chance to experience that in what this whole experience was. And Art Blakey didn't hold back in delivering with his band, and it's amazing. I want to start back really about the journey of finding these recordings. Starts back probably around the fall of 2017. I want to say probably about September, October. I had gone over to Tokyo. I go over a couple of times a year to meet with the journalists and the retail community there and see so many wonderful friends. I was first made aware, I was over there in the fall of 2017, and I was made aware of these recordings that a guy named Mr. Nomoto, Ryuichiro Nomoto, had of Art Blakey. And I was told that these never been out before. And then, of course, it's Wayne Shorter and Lee Morgan and Bobby Timmons and Jymie Merritt and Blakey, of course. What are you talking about? Never before released recordings. And it was audio from a long lost film that still supposedly has not surfaced. But in any event, these recordings were there. I was told about the tapes. I had a chance to listen to them. I thought it was quite interesting. And sometimes, Greg, the way that it just works out, the projects that I produce for a variety of reasons may or may not be a match for a label. And that certainly was the case of Resonance Records. And Art Blakey was an exclusive Blue Note artist. Interestingly enough, as we flash forward into 2018, I found myself in an interesting position. I had gotten called up, invited to Blue Note Records to meet with Don Was and general manager Justin Seltzer, who had asked me about the possibility of coming to work with them. And hey, what would be some of those projects that we could do? I was like, oh my gosh, there are those Art Blakey tapes from Japan. So I had a list of different projects: Lee Morgan live at the Lighthouse, Just Coolin' from Art Blakey, and a variety of other things that I thought about. And the tapes came back into play. Don Was heard the music, really enjoyed it, and it wasn't soon thereafter that we started seriously having discussions about what would it take to bring these recordings out. And before you knew it, we were negotiating and eventually acquired the physical tapes for these performances. So it's really now going on 5 years just about that I've known about these recordings. And sometimes it really is, Greg, about timing, and it all worked out. And it's so exciting to be able to present this music. I mean, this is really one of the most fabled groups that Blakey had, and so important. And to unearth a new chapter with this group is quite something totally extraordinary.
Yeah, I wonder, did anyone know these tapes were out there? I mean, this seems like a surprise. Like this guy was just holding on to them. Was there a story about how this gentleman in Japan acquired them? Was he part of the recording industry, or how did he
I
get
mean,
them?
I don't know if I necessarily have all the details, but from what we know, he had been working on trying to find this lost film, and in the process came across the tapes. So he approached some colleagues of mine in Japan who made me aware of that, and one thing led to another, and here we are on the trail working on this release.
So I was going through the liner notes, and there's sort of a backstory that maybe you can comment on, and Don Was especially went into this at the beginning, how the band felt so appreciated when they got to Japan, unlike they had felt in America. Part of it had to do with sort of the racial undertones of what was going on in America, but they all exclaimed that they were treated like rock stars, as you said. They were loved beyond what they had experienced in the US. And that, I think, came through in the music, because they were playing to appreciation that maybe they hadn't got in America.
Well, I think, just getting back to that poll that Bob Blumenthal talked about the overall interest in Japan of the American groups, this was the one group that most folks really wanted to see. And it was an explosive entry onto the Japanese scene when they came. And what was so important also, I think, about Art Blakey and his relationship with Japan, and we also know this, we had some wonderful discussions with his son Takashi, and basically from this point forward until the end of his life, Art was continually going over every year and had developed such a following. And he really left a mark in terms of making that impression, being an ambassador, bringing the love, meeting people over there, and spreading the message of this music. So he's really, like, I see him, a messenger, an ambassador, if you will, and definitely one of the greats. And can you only imagine in 61 being a fan of this music, what it must have been like to be there? All you got to do is drop the needle and listen for yourself. There is so much excitement that's captured on the recordings.
Definitely. And I see that both Art Blakey and Wayne Shorter ended up marrying Japanese women. I don't want to say because of this tour, but right after this. So their love of Japan and the Japanese was even more than most Americans even realize.
It was really wonderful, right? Because it was an exchange, and it's quite evident that the band was taken with Japan and its people, and vice versa with the people of Japan and this music. And yeah, something to be said about that.
I haven't even showed you the record yet, even though you've seen it. I have a copy. I was lucky enough to get a copy because I'm working on a little project for you guys. But let me change the view so you guys can see what we're talking about here. Okay. That's a fantastic photo. That looks a little bit like the Big Beat cover. Do you know the origins of this photo?
Yeah, that's a photograph actually taken by the great Jan Persson,
Mhm.
who
Yeah,
is one of the legendary jazz photographers.
beautiful
And it
photo.
just really worked well. I really loved the picture. I think our whole team fell in love with it. And, I wanted to just say that Meat and Potatoes did the art direction led by Todd Galappo, and they just did a wonderful job bringing this to life.
Yeah.
I think like we had certain aesthetics, certain ideas,
Mhm.
flowers, certain sort of things, maybe some Japanese writing on the cover, and Meat and Potatoes really came back with some incredible art direction, and
Yeah, nice
my
design.
hats off to them. Yeah, they really
Reminds me of like a kimono that you'd see Blakey wearing later. He's
hmm,
dressed in the Japanese garb sometimes, and the huge smile. It's obviously a 2 record set, so we got a gatefold with all kinds of artwork, posters.
and the insert. Speaking of Art Blakey and his kimono, you can take a look for it yourself. It's actually the picture that leads out. He's wearing it, and he's actually in front of the drums. Yeah, what an amazing photograph! That
Right
picture.
there.
Yeah, that photograph was taken by Mr. Hazumi Nakadira. And our good friends Yasuhiro Fujioka from the Coltrane House of Osaka, and our very good friend Teruyuki Ted Akiyama actually helped us on the ground in Japan work with that photo archive. We really scoured all over the earth finding period photographs that would work really well. And we lucked out. We found pictures taken on that tour. So, I mean, it just kind of all came together.
Now, when I first saw this photo, okay, it's a drumstick, but it looks like a katana, like a Japanese sword.
Powerful photo. Oh my
So,
God. When we first saw it, it was like,
this is the most reading I've ever done on an album, okay, to be honest. And I try to get through every single interview. There's so much. I made a list. I don't know if we have time to get into all of them, but the amount of people you have on here who've written.
Sure. I made a list too here. So I want to have it in front. So obviously Wayne Shorter and Lou Donaldson, the great Japanese saxophonist,
Well,
Sadao.
I think we have to slow down for people who don't know who all these names are.
Oh, sure.
I think Sadao Watanabe is kind of well known in the U.S., Japanese player, but he says he wrote a song that Wayne Shorter did, and I didn't know he had any involvement with this stuff. So
with Cindy Blackman Santana, who was friends with Art and even babysat Art's children when they were growing up, and was a part of that family. And she could really talk about the Art Blakey University, if you will. And not to mention, of course, lead essay by the great Bob Blumenthal, renowned Japanese music critic Reiko Yukawa. We have an essay from Mr. Nomoto, who is the one we acquired the tapes from, plus Takashi Blakey, Don Was, myself. It's extraordinary. And also Donald Harrison. I don't want to leave him out too.
Donald Harrison was, for those who don't know, was one of the later players. He was paired with Terrence Blanchard, Donald Harris on sax, Terrence Blanchard on trumpet. Don had the honor of interviewing Wayne Shorter for sort of the centerpiece interview, and he refers to him as Maestro throughout, which I thought was great. And he talks about how he got invited to play with the Jazz Messengers. There's a lot of great stuff in here, over and above just the Japanese tour. There's a lot of background information. So really,
Craig, I felt like we had a responsibility if we were going to put together an Art Blakey release of such gigantic proportion, that I wanted us to build a package that went along and celebrated his legacy and spirit as well. And that obviously to me meant having alum, people that knew him, people who could talk at great lengths about his genius and his legacy. And I feel that we really accomplished that. This is really a celebration of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and I'm very proud of this project. I want to talk about the process, too. We had a chance to work with there were 5, I believe, 7-inch tape reels. that I brought back from Japan. And my co-producer, David Weiss, and I worked with the legendary recording engineer, Bernie Grunman, who, using his proprietary technology, was able to really enhance the sound. And really do some wonderful work with it. And I think that you hear the product on these recordings as an end result. The music starts out with an explosive version of Now's the Time, which features a 5-minute drum solo from Art Blakey. Very few musicians you could open an album with the drum solo. Moaning, of course, one of the hits of the great Bobby Timmons. Also, there's Dat Dere, another hit for Bobby Timmons. A lot of his repertoire, around midnight. But I think one of my favorite tunes on here would be the roaring version of A Night in Tunisia. And A Night in Tunisia from the Jazz Messengers on Blue Note was the first Art Blakey album that I ever picked up and owned. And it was kind of like coming back full circle for me and getting a chance to hear a version that hadn't been out before. Lee and Wayne sound amazing, but Lee takes this wonderful solo on here too. They are swinging hard, and it's just really great to hear them. It sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
It is available by the time that this airs. It'll be out in stores. It comes out December 10th, this Friday. But I encourage people to listen to this music, to celebrate Art Blakey, all that he accomplished, and listen to the wonderful music made by these master musicians. It is just a gift for the world. And, it just continues. We've had this conversation before about unearthing these documents. And, this is really a great document, a representation of what the band was doing. And it gives me hope that we're going to continue to keep finding things that are out there. But these are tapes that I get a chance to carry them through this process all these years now. It's just a really wonderful feeling. And I just really have to thank Art Blakey's family, the Art Blakey estate, for their support. And I really have to thank Don Was and also Justin Seltzer at Blue Note for having the confidence and believing in this project and committing to it and saying that we're gonna do this. And I'm just very proud. Just put on this music and just listen and let it take you away. It's really a remarkable recording.
I'm sure you're gonna sell a lot of them. Great players. There's such high demand for Lee Morgan right now. Anything with Blakey, people love. Wayne Shorter, and other guys on here. So what I did want to ask you is what you were alluding to a minute ago was, it seems like we're in this golden age of people finding buried treasure. And are we going to run out of this buried treasure, or are people coming out of the woodworks because now they know that this stuff has economic value? Has this stuff just been sitting dormant because no one thought anything of it?
Well,
it's a weird phenomenon that's happening right now.
It gives me hope, but I have to say there is a distinction between something that is good and something that is great. And when we make an effort like this, we're really sending a statement that this is important, Art Blakey, to unearth, to add to another chapter to his legacy. You can't always do that necessarily. These tapes checked out. We have to vet them. We have to listen to them. We have to really evaluate and saying, is this the musician at their very best? Well, what we had here was the beginning of a whole story and a part of a larger narrative about the Messengers' first trip to Japan and how they really helped change the history of the music, and especially in that country, in Japan, with its wonderful love affair of jazz music. And Art Blakey is such a big part of that.
Really appreciate you spending the time with me, and look forward to seeing what the reviewers and what my friends in the vinyl community have to say when they get a hold of this record. It's really something special. So I think we'll sign off. And thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much. I hope everyone enjoys it.
I'm sure they will. Thanks again.